wanted to do a quick survey first. How many of you have bought from Zappos before? And okay, so actually it's interesting because normally when I do the survey, the ratio is about 2 to 1 women to men, and I guess it's a little different in Silicon Valley. But so a lot of the men I asked, I've asked if they say they haven't bought from us, but they've heard of us or they're vaguely aware of us because, like, their wives or significant others, they see these white boxes showing up and then they disappear. They don't know what happens to them. And we actually had a executive from a major record label come into our offices, and this was a few months ago. And we actually offer tour. We're located in Las Vegas. We offer tours. It takes about an hour, and it's actually a lot of fun. I think there's some people who here has been on a Zappos tour before. So, okay, there's a handful of people here, and it's not like you'll hear me talk about in the presentation about our culture, but it's not really until you come and visit our offices that you can really get a sense of our culture at Zappos, and it's a lot of fun. We'll pick you up from the airport in the Zappos shuttle, drop you off at your hotel or wherever you want to go in Las Vegas within certain city limits. And but we had this executive from a record label come into our offices, and he went through the merchandising area on the ground floor, and then went upstairs to our customer loyalty team, which is what we call our call center. And I asked him, have you bought from Zappos before? And he said, no, but he thinks his wife has because he keeps seeing these Zappos boxes show up. And then when we walked by one of the call center reps, he forced himself to sit down next to her and forced her to look up his wife's account on Zappos. And when she pulled it up, he discovered that she had spent over $62,000 in her lifetime. So, yeah, so I don't think they're divorced yet, but hopefully we weren't involved. So I guess before getting into talking about Zappos, I want to talk a little bit about what led me to Zappos. And the story actually starts with pizza in college. I was running a pizza business on the ground floor of my dorm, and our dorm had 300 or 400 people, and basically was making the pizzas, occasionally hiring workers, deciding on prices, and so on. And this guy named Alfred, who's actually our CFO and COO today at Zappos, he would stop by every night and buy a large pizza from me. And that wasn't actually that surprising because, like, anytime we would go out to dinners like this, there'd be however 8 or 10 people at the table, and whatever people didn't finish, he would actually finish all their leftovers. And we used to call him the human trash compactor, or monster for short. And so he would come by, buy a large pizza, use his frequent pizza diner's card, and then sometimes come by a few hours later and buy another large pizza. Well, I found out several years later he was taking them upstairs and selling them off by the slice. So that's why he's our CFO and COO today. After the pizza business, this guy named Sanjay, who I was the one actually running the pizza business with, he and I started a company called Link Exchange in 1996. And it ended up being funded by Sequoia. And we grew that to about 100 or so people, and then ended up selling it to Microsoft in 1998. But what a lot of people don't know is actually the reason why we ended up selling the company. And it's because we didn't pay any attention to company culture. We just didn't know it any better. We were fresh out of college, and this was our first kind of real business together. And so I remember, this was during the first .com boom. Like it was like your typical .com at the time. It was a lot of fun. We were working around the clock, had no idea what day of the week it was, showering occasionally, sleeping under our desks, and that's what we did when it was just 5 or 10 or 15 of us. But because we didn't pay any attention to company culture, by the time it was 100 people, we hired all the people with the right experience and skill sets and people that our VCs recommended and so on, but I myself dreaded waking up in the morning and having to go into the office. Like it just wasn't the same as it used to be. And that was kind of a weird feeling because this was a company that I had co-founded, and if I myself didn't look forward to going to the office, how must the other employees feel? So that was actually a big reason why we ended up selling the company to Microsoft. So after selling the company, Alfred and I got together and we formed an investment fund and also had an incubator to go along with it. And we invested in about 20 or so different internet companies. Amongst them were Ask Jeeves, OpenTable, Mongo Music, which got sold to Microsoft, and a handful of others. But Zappos just was one of the 20 or so different investments that we made. And over time, I realized a couple things. One is that investing is actually really boring. Like you're just sitting on this, at least for me, it was just sitting on the sidelines, and I really missed actually building something. And then the other thing that I didn't realize at the time was that I was spending most of my time with the companies that were not doing well, and that was not as fun as actually being involved with a company that was doing well, because the ones that were doing well really didn't need much advice or help from investors. So basically within a year, we had already basically made all the investments we were going to make, and I ended up joining Zappos full-time, and I've been with Zappos ever since. We've been around for 9.5 years now. So when we first started, the original idea behind Zappos was let's just sell a lot of shoes online. And this was back in the day when people were selling pet food or furniture online, so why not shoes? And that's actually how a lot of people still view us today, as an online footwear retailer. But internally, we actually think of ourselves pretty differently. We think of the Zappos brand as really just about the best customer service and the best customer experience. And we actually sell a lot more than shoes. We sell clothing and cosmetics, electronics, all sorts of stuff. So we've gotten a lot of recognition recently, but actually the one that we're most proud of is that we just made the Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For, and that was actually a goal that we set early on when Zappos first started, because we really wanted to make sure that we didn't make the same mistake that I made at Link Exchange, and so we're pretty happy about that. We have a little over 10 million customers now, so that's a little over 3% of the US population. And we really focus on just repeat customers, because on any given day, 75% of our orders are from repeat customers. Over the past 9.5 years, we've basically grown from nothing to, we just surpassed $1 billion in gross merchandise sales last year. And the number one driver of that growth, the number one driver of that growth has been through repeat customers and word of mouth. So basically our whole philosophy is take most of the money that we would have spent on paid advertising and instead put that into the customer experience. And so things like free shipping both ways, or running our call center 24/7, or running our warehouse 24/7. And all of those things are actually very expensive, but we really, even though on a financial statement or P&L statement they don't show up as a marketing cost, we really internally just view those as our marketing costs and let our customers drive basically our referrals and telephone is through word of mouth branding devices out there. You have the customer's undivided attention for 5 to 10 minutes. And if you get that interaction right, then it's something that we found our customers remember for a very long time and tell their friends and family about us. And so it seems not that sexy, but actually, rather than viewing the call center or customer service as a cost you're trying to minimize and maximize efficiency in, we really view those as our marketing dollars and branding dollars. So we make a lot of investments in free shipping, 365-day return policy. We'll direct customers to competitor websites if we're out of stock of a certain item. Everyone's trained on doing that. And again, because we're not trying to maximize each and every possible transaction, we're trying to build a lifelong relationship with our customers. And really, that just all goes back to viewing the telephone as a branding device as opposed to some expense that's just annoying. And so, talking about all these different things we do, you may think that customer service is our number one priority, but it's actually not. Our number one priority is company culture. Our whole belief is that if you get the culture right, then most of the other stuff, like great customer service or building a long-term sustainable brand, will just happen naturally on its own. So we invest a lot in culture. Everyone that's hired in our Las Vegas headquarters, doesn't matter what position you're in, you can be an accountant, software developer, or lawyer, you go through the exact same training as our call center reps. And that includes going over company culture, the importance of customer service, our company history, and then you're actually on the phone for 2 weeks taking calls from customers. And then we'll send you to Kentucky for a week where you do the different warehouse functions, shipping, packing, receiving, returns processing, and so on. And all of that has nothing to do with the job that you were actually hired to do. And our whole belief is that if we're serious about our brand being about the very best customer service, then customer service should be the entire company, not just a department. And during that whole process, we actually are still evaluating you, and if we find, and this has actually happened, even though you haven't started your actual job, if we find that you're not actually as passionate about customer service as we expect you to be, then we will actually fire you during the training process, even though that has nothing to do with the actual job that you were hired to do. When we interview people, we actually do 2 sets of interviews. The hiring manager and his or her team will kind of do the standard fit within the team, relevant experience, technical ability, and so on. But then our HR department does a separate set of interviews purely for culture fit, and they have to pass both in order to be hired. So we've actually passed on a lot of really talented people that can make an immediate impact on our top or bottom line, but if they're not a fit with our culture, we won't hire them. And the reverse is true too. We'll fire people even if they're doing their specific job perfectly fine, but if they're bad for the culture and aren't living up to the Zappos core values, we'll fire them just for that. And performance reviews are 50% based on culture fit. And then we actually are very, during the initial 4-week training process, we actually introduce everyone to Twitter, and we found that that's been a great way of helping build company culture, because then employees can learn more about each other on a more personal level, get to see each other as friends as opposed to just coworkers. And most people actually, when they leave the Zappos offices, end up leaving to go hang out with other Zappos employees. And during new manager orientations, we encourage managers to spend 10 to 20% of their time outside the office with their team or the people they work with. We have a culture book that, this is something we put out once a year. We're actually on our 5th edition right now. And I'll make this available for free for anyone that, I'll give my contact information later on. But basically, we put this out once a year. This is about 500 pages. And we ask all our employees to write a few paragraphs about what the Zappos culture means to them. And except for typos, it's unedited. So you get to read both the good and the bad. And it's organized by department, so you can see how the warehouse culture, for example, might be slightly different from the merchandising culture. And we give that to prospective employees. And it's kind of like customer reviews you might see on websites, except these are essentially employee reviews of the company. And it's just an example of us trying to be as transparent as possible, no matter who we're dealing with. So, I've talked about us starting out with shoes, but one of the big pushes that we're trying to make for 2009 is actually into clothing. A lot of people know Zappos for shoes, don't necessarily know that we actually have a pretty big selection of clothing. So for 2009, our goal at Zappos in terms of the Zappos brand is really about owning the 3 C's. We want to, for customers that have never heard of Zappos, we want to make sure that they know that we have a great selection of clothing, including shoes. For customers that are aware that we sell clothing and shoes, then we want to make sure that they know about our customer service. And that's usually more something where it's not us telling them about it so much as it is them experiencing it when they call our call center, for example, or experience the surprise upgrades we do to a lot of customers to overnight shipping. And then for customers that know about our customer service, then we want them to know about our culture at Zappos, because that's really what's driving everything. And so whether it's the happiness that, we've had customers email us and tell us that when they open up a Zappos box and take out that pair of shoes or that article of clothing, they refer to Zappos as happiness in a box. So whether it's that happiness or the happiness that customers feel when they experience our customer service, or the happiness that employees feel when they feel like a part of our culture, the thing that kind of ties all that together in terms of the Zappos brand and what we're trying to accomplish is that Zappos is really just through clothing or customer service or company culture, Zappos is really just about delivering happiness to the world. So that's the thing that we see tying everything together. So I want to talk a little bit about culture because a lot of people, when they tour our offices, they can get a good sense of our culture. But what actually is the Zappos culture? And so we actually formalized the definition of our culture into 10 core values. And actually the key word here is committable core values, because a lot of companies have, especially larger companies, they call them core values or guiding principles or whatever, but usually they're very lofty sounding and it reads like a press release, and maybe it's something you learn on day one of orientation, but then it's just kind of this meaningless plaque on a wall. And so by committable, we mean that you're actually willing to hire and fire and do performance reviews based on them. And so coming up with the list is actually pretty hard. And so we've always thought that company culture was important, but it wasn't until 3 or 4 years ago that we came up with our list of core values, committable core values. So this is our list of the 10 core values that we believe in at Zappos and that we hire and fire based on. So the thing that actually trips us up the most is probably number 10, be humble, because there's a lot of really smart, talented people that we know would add a lot of value in the short term to Zappos, but if they're really egotistical, we'll pass on them, and it's not even a discussion or debate. Whereas I think what would happen at most companies is, the discussion afterwards would be, well, this person is really, he's going to add a lot of value to the company right away, immediate impact on our top or bottom line. And he's probably going to rub you the wrong way and be really annoying, but he's going to add a lot of value, so we should hire him. And that one hire isn't going to bring the company culture downhill, but you keep making compromises like that over and over and over again. I think that's why most large companies actually don't have great cultures, because that's what ends up happening. So we actually have interview questions for each and every one of these, and also for performance reviews. We have questions and evaluation questions for each of these. So just to give some examples, number 3 is create fun and a little weirdness. And so one of our interview questions is actually on a scale 1 to 10, how weird are you? And if you're 1, you're probably a little bit too straight-laced for us. If you're 10, you're probably too psychotic for us. But it's not actually so much what number people say, but more how they react to the question. Because some people just, they've prepped for every possible interview question. They don't know how to answer this one. And for us, it's, our belief is that everyone is a little weird in some ways. So this is more just a fun way of saying that we really celebrate everyone's individuality and we encourage their true personalities to come out. And if someone's interviewing and is more, is not comfortable with their own true personality coming out, that's probably not someone that we would end up hiring. Number 4, be adventurous, creative, and open-minded. Our interview question, one of the questions for this is, on a scale 1 to 10, how lucky are you in life? And 1 is, I don't know why bad things always seem to happen to me. 10 is, I don't know why good things always seem to happen to me. And so we generally don't want to hire the unlucky people because they'll bring bad luck to Zappos, and we don't want any of that. But this was actually inspired by a research project that I had read about a few years ago, where they actually asked this exact same question to just a random group of people. And they got answers all over the board. Some people answered 1, some people answered 10, some people answered 5, and everything in between. And then they had them do a task afterwards. And the task was to go through a newspaper and count the number of photos there were in that newspaper. Well, what they didn't know was that it was actually a fake newspaper, and sprinkled throughout in the newspaper were these headlines that would say things like, if you're reading this headline now, you can actually stop. The answer is 36. And by the way, tell the researcher you read this and collect an extra $100. So what they found was that the people that consider themselves unlucky in life generally never noticed the headlines. They just went through the task at hand, came up with the right answer, but never stopped beforehand, never collected the $100. And the people that consider themselves lucky in life, basically most of them just saw the headlines, stopped early, collected the extra $100. So the takeaway isn't so much that people are inherently lucky or unlucky, but that luck is really more about being open to opportunities beyond what seems to be the task at hand or the situation as it presents itself. So that's why we asked that question for our core value number 4.